I want to talk about another display, I guess, of whether you call it Islamic domination, I don't know, but the Al-Quds Day march on Sunday. So if people don't know, Al-Quds Day has been going on for many decades. It was actually founded by the first Iranian supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini.
Bit of a tell right there.
Bit of a tell,
goes
yeah.
on, but
so it's obviously presented as a pro-Palestine event. Al-Quds is the Arabic word for Jerusalem. But clearly, you know, the fact that it's founded by the Ayatollah, the fact that it's associated with the Islamic Republic, I just don't think you can't hide what this is really about, Tom. I mean, and people were not hiding that, actually, as it happens at the march. They were, you know, holding banners and waving placards in, you know, praising the late Ayatollah, the one that was most recently killed in the war. It's this scary stuff.
It is. This was the year that I suppose the mask slipped, but it slipped a long time ago, really. I mean, obviously, with the Ayatollah having been recently dispatched in the US-Israel war with Iran, it just gave way to just sort of teary-eyed memorials to him, banners saying "Be on the right side of history" with a picture of the late, not so great Islamist butcher on it. From the platform at the demonstration, there was a representative of the Islamic Human Rights Commission. It's an organisation with a very trolly name for reasons that we might get into.
It's a slightly different conception of human rights than we might have.
Yes,
to put it mildly,
openly referring to Hamneh as a martyr. People waving again placards quite clearly calling for the destruction of Israel. There's one person who got arrested for a bomb Tel Aviv sign. But this has been going on for a long time. I mean, there was actually a memo that was circulating in the Home Office ahead of the demonstration on the weekend, because of course it's normally a march, but it was downgraded to this static protest because concerns were raised, and the Met Police actually asked for it to be explicitly banned. Just pointing out that for many years now, it has been a sort of magnet for anti-Semitism and support for prescribed organisations. It was back in 2008 or thereabouts, I think, Jeremy Corbyn was photographed addressing the crowd flanked by Hezbollah flags, which is illegal to own or fly in this country, certainly at this point. So it's been an open secret that was that event, that annual demonstration, under the guise of being pro-Palestine, was just pro-Islamic Republic and many of the other kind of scumbags therein. But this year, that just came out crashing to the surface. And again, it raises so many questions about, obviously the discussion is focused on whether or not the march should have been banned. I don't think, as ever, kind of, you know, authoritarianism is the answer to all this. I'm glad that we can see this for what it is, but I do just wonder why no one was noticing for the years and years and decades, in fact, in which this sort of carnival of hatred would be on London streets, and no one would really say boo about it. There's a kind of peculiar sickness and complacency which we're now having to reckon with.
Connie, what did you make of it?
Well, I don't have any objections to the limits that the police put on the march, because this is the equivalent of having a pro-Hitler rally during World War II. We are effectively at war with Iran, whether people like to admit it or not. And that it was, like Tom was saying, it's a blatant display of support for a terrorist regime. And there was also a Taliban flag on display as well, which was just, I mean, can you think about like British soldiers that fought in Afghanistan for all that time, just to now see the flag of the Taliban to be flown on the streets of London? I mean, the betrayal of that. I mean, of course, everything else that happened in Afghanistan when we pulled out in 2021, or when America, pulled out in 2021. But to see that is just shocking. And at the same time, I agree, Tom, it's good to be able to display the fact that we have these people here. And speaking to some journalists who went, I've heard that they saw buses of people being bussed in to go to this march. Like, I'm sure people from all across the country had come down to go to it. I mean, it's just that everyone's been saying for a long time, you know, what point do people start to realise that there is such a huge issue here? But then again, what is the solution? How do you de-radicalise people? I think in some ways, even if, for example, we hypothetically close the borders, what do we do about the fact that we have people born in this country who are have far more allegiance to their ethnic and religious beliefs than to Britain? And that is a huge issue that we're going to have to deal with. And it's going to be quite uncomfortable to come to terms with it, the fact that we have our own homegrown terrorists now. I mean, even the 7/7 bombers. I watched a documentary about it recently, and the narrator was saying, how was it that 4 British boys ended up blowing up the streets of London. It's like, well, they had allegiances to Pakistan. And we're going to have to come to grips with this. It's a very difficult conversation to have.
And the fact, and as we've been saying, it's a conversation that people are refusing to have, or refusing to even not acknowledge that the problem even exists. Tom, I did want to ask you about one character in particular who appeared at the Al-Quds Day protest, Bob Vylan of Glastonbury fame. I was almost disappointed the BBC weren't live streaming the whole event and all the speeches, because they would have been on board with that. But what did you make of that? You wrote a great piece on it earlier this week on his appearance.
I mean, I think it just exploded any of Bobby Vylan.
Bobby Vylan, sorry. Bob Vylan is the band. Bobby Vylan is the man, Pascal Robinson Foster.
Exactly. Pascal Robinson Foster, we should actually say his proper double-barrel names. I think that's somewhat revealing to a certain extent. Ipswich owns Pascal Robinson Foster.
Which I'm from Ipswich, so it's quite, I don't claim him.
Giving him a bad name, giving the place a bad name. But no, it's to stand on a platform in front of a picture of the Ayatollah chanting death to the IDF, a slogan that up until like 5 minutes ago you were claiming it's just about ending the Israeli occupation. He told Louis Theroux to go, someone we'll talk about a little bit later on his podcast, that the only reason I chose the word death is because it rhymes with IDF. It's got nothing to do with calling for the killing of soldiers who are expected to serve in the Israeli army to protect themselves from anti-Semitic genocidal forces. It's not anything blood-curdling or concerning at all. It's just about the Palestinians. It's just about the downtrodden and oppressed of the world. Meanwhile, you're standing in front of the picture of a man who, before he was killed in a missile strike, had just slaughtered up to 30,000 of his own people. If we don't see what this is now, we never really will. And I said this in the piece, but I think there was a while there where we tend to kind of dismiss a lot of the kind of progressive wing of the pro-Palestine movement as just useful idiots. They've been sold the kind of Amnesty International line on this conflict, shorn of any of the history, shorn of any of the details about what a group like Hamas actually is and represents, convinced that the horrors that were inflicted on the people of southern Israel on that day was just made up or exaggerated or whatever. And that, again, they've just been misled. I don't think that holds for Bob Vylan. For many of the people that we've been talking about recently, I think there's an extent to which, first of all, they're very aware of what it is that they're flirting with. I also think they kind of get off on it. I think there's an element of you see it in the kind of cockiness with which they recite these chants, that there's a sort of frisson they get from saying something which is clearly sending shudders through much of the country, and also a certain sort of Ayatollah chic or a sort of Islamist chic that they get from rubbing shoulders with these 7th century nostalgists. It's maybe this is a kind of this is almost cultural as much as it is political, but that was always the thing that really disturbed me about the Glastonbury controversy as much as anything else. It wasn't just the fact that this was being chanted from the stage and live streamed and wasn't cut and all the rest of it. It's the fact that people were just chanting it back as well. The sense that this has just become a part and parcel of being a sort of edgy cultural person. That is, again, is something that is really important that we get to grips with, because if this was just a sort of political activist in the mold of someone out of the Stop the War coalition, we know what that is, but this is in a slightly different space now, and it's just become kind of supposedly edgy and interesting to engage in the most sort of despicable, morally depraved rhetoric possible. And this was just a reminder of that. And any of the excuses that were made by Bobby Vylan or for him, just, I think, lying tatters on the floor now.
Absolutely. Connie, do you want to say anything on this?
My question would be to these people is, what is your end goal? What would your world, your utopia look like? Because I think they would, but what we understand to be their end goal is something that I don't think they would be very happy with. Do they want to live in an Islamist, Jew-hating society? Because that is what everything they're doing, that's supposedly what the end result is. And I don't think that's what they would want. So it's similar. I mean, I see a lot of similarities between trans activism and being able to talk about Islam, because not least because you get called transphobic or Islamophobic. There are the blasphemy laws that are part of the culture that you get cancelled for talking about it. But when you talk to trans activists, they cannot hold up their own argument. I would like to see, you don't see many debates between people who are concerned about this and people who are supposedly in favour of living under a caliphate. But even, GB News, when Alex Armstrong was going down there, the Islamic Human Rights Commission was stopping him from speaking to people, even people that he wanted to speak to. He was being prevented from having those conversations. What is it they're so scared of? It's the same as when you try and speak to trans activists. I can't imagine the other side of the argument ever not wanting to talk. If you really knew what you were speaking about, I would love to have a Pink News journalist come up to me at a women's rights protest, but you don't see that because they know that they couldn't hold it up, and that's why they don't want to talk about it. So that would be my question to them.
And they don't fundamentally believe in debate or free speech or any of those important values.